The renegade vessel. The Vendetta emerged from the nebula like a phantom, its obsidian hull absorbing, rather than reflecting light. The massive vessel, nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, moved with an eerie silence that belied its size. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the command deck, her weathered face illuminated by holographic displays showing the approaching Galactic Enforcement Fleet. "They found us again," First Officer Hassan remarked, his voice calm despite the 16 warships converging on their position. Ilara nodded, running a hand through her silver-streaked hair. "They always do. Status report. Quantum drive at 93%. Defensive systems optimal. Weapons." Hassan paused, glancing at the captain. "All systems primed." The comm system crackled to life. "Unidentified human vessel. This is Admiral Catherine of the Galactic Enforcement Authority. Your ship violates 7 major provisions of the Orion Accords. Power down and prepare to be boarded." Ilara smiled faintly. "Only 7. They haven't been paying attention." She tapped a control panel. "Admiral Catherine, this is Captain Ilara Voss of the independent vessel Vendetta. We're on a peaceful transit through neutral space. We violated no sovereign territories." "Captain Voss," the Admiral's voice carried the distinctive harmonic undertones of the Thraxi species. "Your vessel's mere existence violates galactic law. The Vendetta's weapons systems and defensive capabilities exceed permitted levels for non-military vessels by exponential factors. Furthermore, our scans detect prohibited technologies including dimensional phasing equipment, consciousness transfer arrays, and quantum-entangled weaponry." Hassan whispered, "They've improved their scanning technology." Ilara nodded. "I'm aware of the Orion Accords, Admiral," she responded. "However, humanity never signed them. We were deemed too primitive to participate in their drafting 2 centuries ago. A convenient oversight. Your species' ambassador ratified the treaty 43 years ago, when humanity joined the Galactic Assembly." Catherine countered. "Compliance is mandatory. This is your final warning. Power down, or we will disable your vessel by force." The comm went silent. Around the Vendetta, the enforcement vessels moved into an encirclement pattern, energy signatures flaring as weapons charge. They deployed a standard Xerian blockade formation. Tactical Officer Cheng announced from her station. "Overlapping fields of fire, quantum tether ready to deploy." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Are they within range of our gravity distortion field?" "All 16 vessels, Captain." "Activate the GD field, 30% power. Let's not hurt them. Just show them why they should reconsider." Hassan looked concerned. "Captain, using the gravity distortion field will confirm their suspicions about our technological capabilities. They already know what we have, Hassan. They just don't understand what it can do." Ilara's voice was firm. "Proceed." Cheng nodded and pressed a sequence of commands. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, simultaneously, all 16 enforcement vessels began to drift out of formation as their navigational systems struggled against an invisible force. "What's happening?" Catherine's voice came through again, alarm evident. "A demonstration, Admiral," Ilara replied calmly. "We're manipulating the gravitational constant within a localized field. Your ship's compensators weren't designed to handle fluctuations at the quantum level. Don't worry. We're being gentle." On the view screen, the enforcement vessel's previously precise formation had deteriorated into chaos as they struggled to maintain position. "This technology is expressly forbidden," Friend shouted. "It destabilizes space-time itself." "Which is precisely why we built it," Ilara countered. "The galaxy is full of threats that don't play by your rules, Admiral. Humanity hasn't survived this long by handicapping ourselves with arbitrary restrictions." As if to emphasize her point, she nodded to Cheng, who increased the field to 40%. The enforcement vessels began to spin slowly, their thrusters firing ineffectively against the altered physics surrounding them. "We've confirmed additional vessels entering the system," Hassan reported. "Looks like Arcturian heavy cruisers, They'll be here in 20 minutes. Ilara nodded. More than enough time. She addressed the Admiral again. We're leaving now, Catherine. When the gravitational field dissipates, your ships will regain full control. No permanent damage done. Voss, you can't run forever. Catherine's voice was strained. The Authority has declared the Vendetta a Class 1 threat. Every fleet in the quadrant will be hunting you. Let them hunt, Ilara replied. Quantum drive engaged. The massive ship hummed as its drive core initialized, creating a cocoon of distorted spacetime around the vessel. In an instant that stretched and compressed simultaneously, the Vendetta vanished, leaving the disabled enforcement fleet floating in disarray. 3 days later, the Vendetta drifted in the shadow of a rogue planet deep in unclaimed space. The crew of 47, all human, all volunteers, went about their duties with practiced efficiency. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing neural scans when Ilara entered. How is he? The captain asked, looking at the unconscious figure on the medical bed. Stable, Dr. Chen replied. The neural degradation has slowed since we adjusted the stasis field, but it's still progressing. I give him maybe 3 months before total synaptic collapse. Ilara's face remained impassive, but her hand clenched into a fist at her side. Not enough time. We knew it was a long shot, Captain, Chen said gently. The Kara parasite was designed to be unstoppable. The fact that Commander Reyes has survived this long is already a miracle. Ilara stared at the man who had once been her mentor, now reduced to a shell as the alien parasite gradually consumed his consciousness. It's not just about Reyes. The parasite is spreading. 14 colonies in the Perseus Arm have reported cases in the last year alone. The Authority is covering it up, quarantining entire planets, and calling it localized contagions. Chen nodded grimly. And conventional treatments? Useless, Ilara replied. The parasite adapts too quickly. That's why we need the consciousness transfer technology. If we can isolate the host consciousness before total infection. Their conversation was interrupted by Hassan's voice over the comm. Captain to the bridge. Urgent. When Ilara arrived at the command deck, the atmosphere was tense. Report, she ordered. We've intercepted a coded transmission from an Authority black site in the Cygnus X region. Hassan explained. Our cryptography AI just finished the decryption. He hesitated. It's worse than we thought, Captain. The main view screen displayed a series of reports and images that made Ilara's blood run cold. Entire planets under quarantine. Millions infected. And at the bottom, the most damning evidence. Research logs showing the Kara parasite wasn't a natural evolution, but an engineered bioweapon, created by the Arcturian hegemony and tested on human frontier colonies with the Authority's tacit approval. They used us as lab rats, Hassan said, his voice tight with anger. They're developing a weapon that targets humans specifically, and the Authority is helping them cover it up. Ilara's expression hardened. How long until the parasite reaches Earth? At current infection rates and considering interstellar travel patterns, 6 months, maybe less. The captain straightened her shoulders. Send this data to every human settlement and colony ship in the galaxy. Then set course for Arcturian Prime. Hassan's eyes widened. Captain, that's the heart of the hegemony. Even with the Vendetta's capabilities, we can't possibly. We're not starting a war, Hassan, Ilara interrupted. We're ending one before it begins. She turned to face her crew, determination etched into every line of her face. The Vendetta was built for exactly this purpose. The Authority called us illegal, called our technology dangerous. They're about to discover why we built it anyway. The massive ship's quantum drive engaged once more, tearing a hole in reality as it vanished toward its destination, carrying humanity's unauthorized, and perhaps only, hope for survival. The final stand. The Arcturian shipyard stretched across the upper atmosphere of Arcturian Prime like a metal web, hundreds of kilometers of interlocking platforms, where warships and research vessels were constructed in the vacuum of space. From the Vendetta's position behind the system's outermost moon, the shipyards glittered like a crown of thorns around the blue-green planet. 17 defense platforms, each equipped with quantum disruptors. Tactical Officer Chang reported, plus a fleet of approximately 40 warships in standard patrol patterns. The biological research facility is located here. She highlighted a heavily fortified section of the shipyard, designated Sector Epsilon 9. Security protocols suggest it houses their most classified projects. Ilara studied the display, mentally calculating odds she didn't share with her crew. And the Authority response? Still assembling, Hassan answered. Our data leak has them scrambling. Every human colony is demanding answers. Earth has recalled its ambassadors from the assembly. The Authority has deployed 100 ships to contain the situation, but they're spread thin. Good, Ilara nodded. We need the distraction. She turned to her chief engineer. Commander Riley, status of the prototype. A holographic display appeared showing a complex device the size of a shuttlecraft. The reverse-engineered Kara disruption field is operational, Captain, Riley reported. But I must emphasize, this is still theoretical technology. We've never tested it at full scale. We don't have time for thorough testing, Ilara replied. Dr. Chen. The medical officer joined them on the bridge. The neural patterns from the infected colonists have been integrated into the targeting matrix. If the disruptor works as designed, it should specifically target the Kara neural signature while leaving human consciousness intact. Ilara took a deep breath. Our window is closing. The moment we move from behind this moon, every scanner in the system will detect us. She surveyed her crew, dedicated men and women who had abandoned comfortable lives to join a mission branded as illegal by the very institutions meant to protect them. You all knew the risks when you signed on. This ship, these weapons, we built them because we saw what was coming when no one else would look. Today we find out if we were right. The crew took their positions without hesitation. Quantum drive inactive. Switching to conventional propulsion, Hassan announced. Initiating dimensional phase shift. The Vendetta shimmered, its hull taking on a ghostly, translucent quality as its atoms partially shifted into an adjacent dimension. Not enough to transition fully, but sufficient to confuse most conventional targeting systems. Phase shift holding at 60%, Riley confirmed. We're effectively transparent to standard sensors. Take us in, Ilara ordered. Maximum stealth approach. The massive vessel glided from behind the moon, its partially phased state rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. For precious minutes, they approached undetected, closing half the distance to the shipyards before alarms finally triggered. We've been spotted, Cheng announced. Arcturian defense grid activating. Interceptors launching. Maintain course, Ilara commanded. All power to forward shields and the phase drive. The first barrage of Arcturian fire passed mostly through the semi-phased vessel, dissipating harmlessly into the dimension beyond. What energy did connect splashed against the Vendetta's quantum-reinforced shields. Phase drive straining, Captain, Riley warned. We can't maintain this state for more than 10 minutes. We won't need 10, Ilara responded. Deploy the gravity distortion field, maximum radius. Around the Vendetta, space itself seemed to fold and stretch as fundamental forces were temporarily rewritten within a bubble 50 kilometers wide. The approaching Arcturian vessels suddenly found themselves in a region where the normal laws of physics no longer entirely applied. Ships tumbled as their navigation systems failed. Weapons misfired as targeting algorithms calculated trajectories using now incorrect constants. We're receiving a transmission, Hassan reported. It's Admiral Catherine. Ilara raised an eyebrow. Put him through. The Thraxi Admiral's face appeared on screen, his normally smooth features contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Voss, have you lost your mind? You've brought your illegal vessel into the sovereign space of a founding member of the Galactic Assembly. This is an act of war. No, Admiral, Ilara replied coldly. The act of war was when the Arcturians engineered a parasite to destroy the human race. with authority knowledge. Catherine's expression faltered momentarily. Those are unsubstantiated accusations. The authority is investigating. We sent you proof 3 days ago. Ilara cut him off. While you've been investigating, the Arcturians have been accelerating their program. We tracked infected humans being transported to this facility for experimentation. How many other species are they targeting, I wonder? Who's next after they perfect their bioweapon on us? The Admiral's mandibles twitched, a sign of discomfort in Thraxi physiology. Captain, whatever you're planning is already underway. Ilara finished for him. Cheng, deploy the disruptor. From the Vendetta's ventral bay, the prototype device launched, accelerating toward the research facility. Arcturian point defense systems fired desperately, but the device's own phase shield protected it long enough to reach its target. Disruptor in position, Cheng confirmed. Activating. Now. A pulse of energy unlike anything the assembled fleets had ever witnessed expanded from the device, washing over the entire shipyard complex. Where it touched, nothing seemed to happen visibly. No explosions, no destruction. But within seconds, alarms began blaring across Arcturian communications channels. The disruptor is working, Dr. Chen announced, monitoring data streams. It's identifying and neutralizing the Kara neural pattern wherever it exists. The parasite is being rendered inert. On the view screen, they could see confusion spreading through the Arcturian fleet as the implications became clear. Emergency signals flashed from the research facility. Captain, Hassan's voice was quiet but urgent. I'm detecting massive data purges in progress. They're destroying evidence. Ilara nodded grimly. Deploy the quantum entanglement net. Copy everything before they can delete it. Another device launched from the Vendetta, establishing a field that temporarily linked all data systems within the complex, creating instantaneous copies faster than they could be erased. Admiral Catherine's face had gone ashen. What have you done, Voss? Saved millions of lives, she replied. And secured the evidence. The Vendetta is transmitting everything. Research logs, experimental data, authority communications, to every member world of the Assembly simultaneously. The Arcturians' bioweapon program is now public knowledge, as is the authorities' complicity in covering it up. Before Catherine could respond, new alerts sounded. Captain, we have multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Hassan reported with surprise. They're human vessels, dozens of them. Indeed, surrounding the Vendetta, a fleet of human ships, military vessels, colony ships, even retrofitted civilian crafts materialized from hyperspace. Their presence effectively surrounded the Authority and Arcturian forces. This is Admiral Wei of Earth Defense Command. A new voice announced on all channels. The evidence provided by Captain Voss has been verified. In accordance with Assembly Charter Article 16, Earth formally charges the Arcturian hegemony with biological warfare and demands immediate compliance with interdiction protocols. Catherine looked stunned. You planned this, he said to Ilara. We hoped it wouldn't be necessary, she replied. The Vendetta was built as a last resort when we discovered what was happening years ago. All the technology you deemed too dangerous. The phase drive, the gravity distortion field, the consciousness transfer systems, they were developed because we knew conventional weapons would be useless against biological attack. As the human fleet took up defensive positions, Ilara continued, the Vendetta isn't a warship, Admiral. It's a rescue vessel, designed to save lives when conventional methods fail. Every system on board exists to counter weapons that shouldn't exist, like the Kara parasite. In the days that followed, as authority inspectors confirmed the Arcturian bioweapon program and the full scope of the conspiracy was revealed, the story of the Vendetta spread throughout the galaxy. The vessel that had been branded illegal, its technology too dangerous to permit, had prevented a genocide. 6 months later, Captain Ilara Voss stood before the newly reformed Galactic Assembly. The Vendetta floated in orbit above, No longer a fugitive vessel, but a recognized medical ship, its unique technologies now being adapted to fight diseases and save lives across a dozen worlds. The Orion Accords have been revised, the Assembly Speaker announced. Technology will no longer be restricted based solely on its potential for harm, but evaluated on its capacity for defense and preservation of life. The Vendetta classification has been redesignated from illegal warship to humanitarian vessel of distinction. As Ilara accepted the Assembly's formal apology, she thought of Commander Reyes, now recovering in Earth's best medical facility, his consciousness successfully transferred and restored once the parasite had been neutralized. She thought of the countless colonists saved by the disruptor technology, and the new era of cooperation as species throughout the galaxy recognized that sometimes the most powerful technologies were the ones that preserved life rather than ended it. The ship that had been too powerful to be legal had become the standard by which a new understanding of power was measured, not by its capacity for destruction, but by its potential to save what might otherwise be lost.